You know, one thing that annoys me about politics, other thousands of things, but um, some people say it's a necessary evil, but the things that they argue about when it comes to economics, it's like we're on the Titanic. We just hit the iceberg. We're taking on thousands of gallons of water, and they're arguing about should we bail it out with a teaspoon or tablespoon, and both both solutions are drastically miscalculating the problem or obfuscating the problem intentionally, which is government spending. So when they talk about economic solutions to our problems, they talk about lowering deficit spending, which is lowering overspending. And the way they calculate it is, let's just say the math benefits them to a degree, just like inflation. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I said, all you need to know about government inflation numbers is that year over year, they said groceries went up 3%. 3%. Okay. So they lie, they obfuscate. And at the end of the day, some people believe them. I don't know why. But I saw this tweet. I thought this was very fascinating. Right. So President Biden tweets this. Okay, or somebody tweeted this for him. A billionaire minimum tax of just 25% would raise $440 billion over the next 10 years. Imagine what we could do if we just made billionaires pay their taxes like everyone else. Okay. I don't think the rich, especially politicians, fair share is up to interpretation, but definitely there's tax loopholes for the rich, and the politicians write those tax loopholes. So give me a break on this. But let's just take his statement as truth. Billionaire minimum tax of up to 25% would raise $440 billion over the next 10 years. And let's talk about why this is a teaspoon in the Titanic. Okay. So let's talk about our national deficit. Okay. So if we scroll down here, you'll see, and this is from treasury.gov. This isn't from some right-wing website. Okay. So this is 2023. Notice it says revenue. That would be things we take in taxes. Okay. So that would bump that up by 40 billion in a year. Okay. Assuming it has no negative impacts on GDP. So revenue would go up by 40 billion. See that little orange part there where it says deficit? We're spending 1,700 billion over. 1,700 billion over what we spend or what we take in taxes. And he's talking about the teaspoon of 40 billion a year coming in tax receipts. You see how this drives me nuts? I don't know if it drives you nuts, but that people just don't do the math. We are overspending. That's the problem, folks. And do you think that extra 40 billion would mean that they wouldn't spend more? They would spend more. So the deficit would probably go up by a commensurate 2x, 3x. Okay. So he says 440 billion over 10 years. And let's conservatively say that this deficit, this 1.7 trillion deficit over the next 10 years averages 2 trillion, because as the debt goes up, the interest cost goes up. So over the next 10 years, our deficit is 2,000 billion. Let me say that again. 20,000 billion. 20,000 billion. 20,000 billion. So that's 2,000 billion per year average. And he's talking about 440 billion adding to taxes. When over the next 10 years, we will add 20,000 billion of more debt to the system. It's a teaspoon. It's nothing. It is government spending that's the problem. And they will try to tell people this. There ain't no fixing this, folks. Right? They're going to argue and they're going to virtue signal and they're going to talk about how their teaspoon's better than the opposition's tablespoon on bailing out the Titanic. And it's sinking, and you keep seeing it sinking. And you say, wait a second. You said inflation is only 3% on groceries. It was like 25% last year. Oh, no, no, it's not. We upped billionaires' taxes. And here's the canary in the coal mine. The interest costs. The interest cost. And this has gone up since this number. Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. The interest costs on our debt. Remember, this is unproductive. So if we were adding debt, right, and building roads, building manufacturing plants, that's still not good, but it's productive. Productive. But interest is paying off consumption from yesterday. Remember, when you take on debt, debt is pulling demand from the future into the present. And we keep doing that, right? And the release valve is the dollar, meaning the purchasing power of your currency, the value of your labor. They're devaluing your time, your energy, and your effort every time they do this, every time they pull debt from the future into the present. So now we're paying $659 billion in interest only in 1 year. And this has increased, if you can read it here, $184 billion. So his tax increase on billionaires doesn't even make a dent on the interest cost. Remember, $20,000 billion over the next 10 years. And he's talking about $440 billion. And I would venture to say $2 trillion deficits average over the next 10 years is actually conservative. Because once you reach this parabolic level of debt, the problem is as interest rates go up, you have to add more debt, which means interest rates go up again. Just like if you got into a credit card cycle. So what bothers me is that people buy this. It's not that politicians say it, because politicians are slimy and disgusting, yada, yada. It's that people buy it. Here's the thing, the kind of the silver lining. You can't really lie about gas prices. You can't really lie about groceries, okay? And unfortunately, there are some people on the right, in my opinion, that go, okay, it's this politician's fault. And if this politician gets in, then it'll be better. Sure, it might be better, but the problem of the debt is still there. So one politician could make it worse than another. But the problem is 30 years in the making. It's not one politician. They could make it worse. I'll give you that. In their time, they could push legislation that makes it worse. But there's no getting out of it, right? And so when they argue about what size measuring device they're going to bail out with, it's teaspoons and tablespoons. They're not going to make a dent unless you hear them say, we are cutting government spending. Cutting. What does that mean? That means no Social Security, no Medicare, half the military budget. Do you think that's going to happen? I don't think it's going to happen. And thus, it will proceed. 20,000 billion over the next 10 years. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. I do love these comments. It's like, yeah, rah, rah, yeah, raise the taxes on the billionaires. That's the problem. 20,000 billion. All right. Let me know what you guys think. See y'all in the next one. Peace.